Can't really read this. Could meditation I can't read that. What is it? Tinnitus? Cause tinnitus? Is that what you're thinking? Well,
Yeah, I mean the ears.
yeah, but what's that word? CA should be cause
Cure.
or cure.
Or cure. How do you pronounce it? Can cure.
It's a newfangled penmanship. Okay. I don't know. Go see a doctor. Meditation can't cure everything. Some things it might be, some people claim to have cured their migraine headaches. Some people have claimed to cure all kinds of things through meditation. Other people say, "Oh, you got nothing." You know? So people are different. And there's a lot of causes and conditions that basically cause or govern everything. And so there's no one similar thing probably going to be for everybody. And everybody will come and realize different stages of meditation and enlightenment also by different causes and conditions, different lengths of time, different types of practices, and so on. Although there are general guidelines to follow, but everybody, depending on their karmic limitations and the conditionings, are going to modify it. So, what is useless talk? That's usually referred to what the Buddha calls animal talk. Talk that doesn't conduce to peaceful mind, talk that excites your senses, gets you caught up in arguments and stuff like that, basically. Talking about sensual desires, talking about kings and queens and all kind of things. So basically, it comes down to the Buddha advised the monks, either speak Dhamma or keep quiet. So everything else would fall into useless speech. Although the Buddha did, when he first came to monasteries, he exchanged pleasantries with, the other monks and, how are you doing? This kind of chit chat, but not letting it get into, like slander other people or just basically silly talk. Talk when people get inebriated. Most of that is considered silly talk. So, but there's a lot of, kind of could be gray areas there where it's considered useless talk. But basically, it's certainly talk that would infringe on any of the, let's say, right speech, the wrong kinds of speech. But a lot of the talk, we get caught up in conversation. A lot of it is just, the ego boosting. You butt into a conversation because you think you know the right answer and somebody else is wrong. And people are always butting into conversations, right? When you have a group of people, one person says, and yeah, but, and someone else, yeah, but, winds up goes nowhere. Especially at the, Thanksgiving dinner tables, right? Family reunions, talking about all your relatives and all their bad relationships that happen and all that. So it's better if you're practicing meditation not to get caught up in too much of that, because when you start to meditate, all these thoughts are going to come into your mind from that. That's why, especially in retreats, we ask you to observe silence, because we know that if we let people talk, they're going to start talking about some of these things because they don't have control over their mind. And before you know it, you might ask an innocent question, and then somebody, replies to that and then adds a 2 cents worth. Then you reply to that and add 4 cents worth. And then before you know it, it's drawn out to half an hour, and, all kind of left fields, Anybody have experience with that? So we can see the value in these things. The Buddha didn't say these things and these kind of precepts just to hear himself talk. Because everything he said had a purpose. Can you explain more on how to prevent falling asleep while meditating? Well, we don't have the sleeper's rock here, but in Thailand, I went to a monastery. I actually have photos of me sitting on this rock. When monks got sleepy, the teacher would send them out to sit on this rock, which was just a little a pinnacle on the side of a cliff with sheer drop downs on 3 sides. And he was to sit there. And so that would prevent them from going to sleep. But that sleepiness comes. The first thing you have to know it is, and check your posture. The very first thing, it's because your head is down, guaranteed. You can't go to sleep if you're sitting perfectly straight, really. But it all happens the first moment that chin going down. That means the mind's starting to lose its consciousness, and that causes you to keep going down more and more. You might think you're aware. You might be thinking you're meditating, but actually it's going to be a dead end. It's not going to go anywhere. A lot of people can get into a state where they think they're meditating, but actually it's just an illusion. It's a dead end. They might feel all right. They're not sleeping, but it's not what we would call, clear, bright awareness, and so on. So you can try massaging the muscles in the neck, where these muscles join the body to the upper, the head. Massage those like that. Or maybe do some head turning, do some deep, slow breathing, especially upper chest breathing. Take a deep breath, hold the air in as long as you can. Squeeze every atom of oxygen out into the bloodstream. And that might help. If those things don't help, stand up. Because you're not apt to go to sleep when you're standing. Or go out and do some walking. Go out and breathe some fresh air until you kind of wake up, and then come back and sit again. But just sitting there for the whole hour, kind of doing what I call the bobbing duck, You see in the back of cars or windows, a little duck that's always going like this. So even in the meditations here, if you're doing that, just stand up, quietly stand up. And just do standing meditation. There's lots of things that, cause sleepiness, but, too many thoughts also, the mind gets tired of hearing its own self-talk. So sleep is a way of escaping that. How should we handle ignorant people who frustrate or provoke us? Regard them as your teacher, because they're allowing you to see that you have those things within you. They're not the cause of it. You've already accumulated the causes and conditions to get frustrated, to get angry by so many other things you've been doing in your life. And so there's two causes for suffering. There's what is called the circumstantial cause and the substantial cause. The substantial cause of suffering is the habits and so on that we've been practicing our whole life. And so we've all accumulated all these habits of ego, of, greed, hatred, delusion, and all those habits, or all of our reactions. And so any little thing could trigger that off. And so that's what's called the circumstantial cause. But we tend to blame the circumstantial causes for their problem. And that's why we never get to the core of it, because the problem is within our mind. It's our reaction to things. It's not the outside world that's the problem. It's our reaction to the problem. The Buddha didn't have any problems. He says, the world argues with me. I don't argue with the world. The Buddha used to say that. So it's our reaction to things that are happening. And because we watch others doing it, we just mimic and think that we have to do that too. As a child, you learn these habits, watching how your parents react, watching other TV programs, how people react on TV programs. So when somebody dies, you think, everybody has to cry and grieve. That's just a communal, collective, habit. And so many other things. So anyway, that is, when people push our buttons, then we have to understand that it's our reaction coming up, and tell yourself to relax. Take a deep breath. Don't allow yourself to emit wrong speech or tell the person, why don't you shut up? Or, use some other kind of violent speech, Just keep quiet. Let them talk until they talk themselves sick. And you don't have to reply to everybody all the time. And when you don't reply, people are going to just shut up and go away by themselves. Because it takes two to tango. So if a person comes up, he wants to provoke you. He wants to provoke a response, or she, excuse me. I'm, caught in all these old pronouns. But so if you don't respond to them, they'll just kind of back away, because they need a response in order to continue. I'll tell you, one time I was in Los Angeles, and I was walking through a park in Los Angeles. And so there was 3 or 4 guys who were drinking a lot of beer, and they saw me. And this was at actually a Hare Krishna kind of convention or a festival going on in the park. Hare Krishnas wear the ponytail. So I was just walking by, and then, I heard these guys and his friends were saying, go hit him, get in his face. So they were telling this guy to come up to me and get in my face to scare me or something. So this guy came up, kind of got in front of me. He was kind of giving me dirty looks. And then he was kind of looking in the back and trying to see where my ponytail was. They don't know the difference. Even our robes are very different than a Hare Krishna robe, but the average person, they don't know that. And so, he was trying to provoke me, and I was just vibing him, just saying, may you be happy, may you be free from ignorance. Didn't respond really, and I didn't say anything. I was just thinking that, sending him out these thoughts. And his friends were saying, hit him, because they were drunk, right? And the guy kind of just wasn't responding, so he kind of just backed away and went back to his friends, and they all started laughing and stuff. I just went on my way. So anyway, I'm just saying that as an example of how, you don't react to people But another time I was walking in another part of LA. I was going to a temple, Dhamma Vijaya Temple. It's on this big street, Crenshaw Boulevard in Los Angeles. And if you know that. And so I was walking down the street. I had my robes all wrapped up, and wearing my sandals. And my head was freshly shaved. It was gleaming in the sun. And so I was just walking very slowly. But up ahead, there was these three guys, African-American guys, with their car doors open and their boom box blasting out all of this kind of music. And they were standing there just, talking and whatever. But then they saw me, and then they blocked the sidewalk. They're going to get me or something. I don't know. So I saw them. They blocked the sidewalk. Three people. So I kept walking slowly, and I got up about 6 feet away. And they were just watching me. And then I slipped off my sandals. Slipped my sandals off. And they said, okay, that's cool. Because they watched Kung Fu. the TV program. So they thought I was going to start throwing kicks. But I called their bluff because I don't know Kung Fu. But that was just an example of it. You get all kinds of different reactions. So they opened up and let me walk. Well, fortunately, it didn't have to come to that. How does this practice differ from Zen Buddhism? It depends on what kind of Zen Buddhism you're practicing. Because if you're practicing what's called, I think it's from the school of Soto Zen, what they practice Shikantaza, which means kind of sitting, doing nothing, which is basically a form of awareness. And they're just letting things come and go. They're usually focusing on the breathing, and they're just emptying their mind of reaction and so on. So that is quite similar to what we do here. But there's other forms of Zen practice, like Rinzai, where they take a little nonsensical phrase and try to think about it and realize there's no answer to it. And then finally their minds drops away and they experience emptiness, or at least that's what they, the technique is supposed to do. So whatever the practice, most of the Buddhists, even the Tibetan practice of visualizations, and they create these phantasmic mandalas in their mind and visualizations of all kinds of things. But in the end, they know it's just mental created illusions, and they drop it all, and then they enter emptiness. In other words, so these are techniques, different techniques that people use for the mind to drop its thoughts. So in Vipassana, the Buddha's teaching was, I am not this is not myself, this is not me, to the five aggregates. This body is not me, not mine, not myself. These feelings, not me, not mine, myself. Perceptions, volitions, and even the consciousness. So it's the same thing. There's nothing you can identify. So the mind gives up, drops into silence, or drops everything, and you experience transcendence, even of the ego, temporarily. That's the kind of the theoretical explanation of where it leads, if it's taken to its, full extent. Says, when I was at the creek, I guess today when we were down there, after a short meditation there, I felt I am part of that. I guess just part of the nature, all the nature vibrations that were there. I couldn't distinguish my physical body from the surroundings. As I realized this feeling, that awareness vanished. Is it an illusion of the mind? Everything is an illusion. Even you're looking at me here thinking I'm a monk existing in time and space. That's a mental creation. Your mind is creating that out of molecules and atoms in certain shape and so on that we've identified. But it has no solidity. It's the mind that creates that. And that's why when you enter a deep state of awareness, when you tune into the vibrations, the subtle vibrations, that's what's actually real. But if you call a certain sound vibration, oh, that's a bird singing, that's a thought in your mind. What's actually goes through the consciousness is a sound vibration, or a visible vibration, or a smell, or a taste, or a body vibration of different intensities. But the mind then takes those vibrations and creates a mental created image out of it that is then projected and seen as standing out apart and different from yourself. But all that is created within the mind. So that's an illusion. So having that experience, it is not an illusion. It's the mind getting close to reality. Having, released its grip on the five aggregates, and now is experiencing just this awareness without the mind, with all of its thoughts and divisions. And this is what also happened. This is why with psychedelics back in the hippie days, and I've taken them, so I know that kind of drugs interfere with the mind's perception process, and that's what causes hallucinations and so on. And people can have quasi sort of spiritual experiences when the sense of the self and the ego dissolves and they feel like they're everything. So that is also can happen. It happens in meditation when if you do the practice long enough and in the right way, which can happen. But you never know when it might happen. And if you're thinking it happened, or once it happens, you start to cling to it and think about it, then it may vanish. So that's the thing. It's kind of it's a fine razor's edge when you're meditating. The mind is gonna, there's a saying, heaven and hell are just a hair's breadth apart, because if you're thinking duality, I, me, you're in hell. But if the mind lets all that go and there's just the vast space of awareness, you're in heaven. I mean, just to use this term. That's why these days, there's a lot of talk now. Back in the hippie days when I grew up, and some of you maybe too, I don't know, from the same era, but and now there's a new wave of this coming up, and people are experimenting with all these things called ayahuasca and other things. They're trying to get these sort of quasi spiritual experiences because what those drugs do is it just interferes with the brain's conditioned reactions. Some short circuits, the synapses are dealing with perception and ego creation, because there's parts of the brain that are creating the sense of self and perceptions and things like that. And it's just electromagnetic impulses that are doing all that. And so concentration and mindfulness can interfere with that, like flipping a switch. And like being able to endure pain. If you keep on, scratching everything, that switch is going to be open and the energy is going to keep going around in circles all the time. But through concentration and mindfulness, you can switch that switch. So the energy doesn't go into scratching and it goes into deeper concentration. When you don't waste your energy by all these kind of neurotic movements, then the mind gains concentration. All that dissipated energy from movement now goes into concentration. Energy is never wasted. It only morphs. So if you're wasting energy by all kind of actions, you're not going to get anything. But when all that is still, that's why keeping the body still, having a good posture, not moving, and then reducing the amount of your thoughts, that is what changes the whole brain chemistry and causes these, opens up new brain cells or areas of the brain, taps into things that we haven't experienced before, or closes off some of the more neurotic ones, and so on, that can give you these different types of, experiences. You mentioned that all problems are either in the future or the past. They're coming from that. Thoughts of the past, because the future may not come. And so if you're hoping to get something in the future, it doesn't come, then you're going to get sad. You're going to be disappointed. Or you're going to blame others. All kinds of things. In the same way, if you're going back to the past, trying to recreate it, that perfect holiday, that perfect whatever it was, ain't going to happen probably. And or you're going to fear the pain of painful things coming back to you. Because you can never step into the same stream twice. There's a saying by, I think, Heraclitus or some Greek or somebody. You can never step into the same stream twice because the stream is not the same. It's flowing all the time. So the same way our life and everything, every experience comes up because of certain causes and conditions. And they're constantly changing. And so you're not going to ever have the same exact causes and conditions because it is happening even down to a molecular level. Changes can cause that. So there's actually only the present moment, because when you think of the future, that's a thought in the present moment. And when you think of the past, that's a thought in the present moment. Your mind is recreating that. Can that wait till later? What if you face something at the current moment? For example, if you had a fall or met with an accident and you are dealing with it at the current moment, how would you interpret this? Would this be a I can't read that. Something situation and not a problem? Well, you probably fell because you weren't in the present moment. Most all accidents are because the mind is not in the present moment. And even just a thought, fraction of a second thought can be life or death. We all know that. If you're driving a car, right? You just, your eyes closed for just a second and somebody darts out and you have a crash. So the same way, if you lose your mindfulness, or these people talking on cell phones while they're driving, and because anything can happen at any moment. And if you're not mindful and centered, then any kind of action can happen. So that's the meaning of that. When the mind is not grounded in the present moment and it's getting carried away in thoughts, and almost all thoughts are connected in some way to the past or the future. Maybe you're driving home and you're in a hurry to get home to watch your TV, favorite program on TV or whatever. And then again, you're thinking about that and boom, bicycle comes out and you kill him. Or you get in an accident and you get killed yourself. There's a little saying, tomorrow or the next life, we don't know which is going to come first. And that's so true, isn't it? How many people were thinking about what they were going to do next week, next month, long time, and they were dead, the next morning? Or died in that night by a snake bite, or by a strike of lightning, or just by an unknown congenital heart problem, or so many different kind of things. We just don't know. And that's why the contemplation of death is a very powerful goad for overcoming laziness. There's only one thing certain in life. Life is not certain. Because babies die in the womb. They don't even get out. Or they come out and they die 1 minute after getting out, or 1 hour, or 1 week, or 1 month, or 5 years, or 10 years, up to 100 years or more. People are dying in every different possible way and at any unexpected times. So the time of our death is not certain. Death is certain, but the time of it is not certain. How we'll die is not certain, and where we'll die is not certain. But death is certain. But people tend to, kind of ignore that. When we're born, all the cards are on the table. All the cards are on the table. Any infinite number of ways that you're going to die, how, when, where, how long you're going to live, everything is on the table. What kind of diseases you could get any kind of disease. Or die in so many different ways. So, when somebody dies, they have to have a coroner come, and if they don't know, if it wasn't obvious, a coroner has to, cut open the body and check to find the cause of death. Right? They have to write the cause of death on a birth certificate. So I used to go to Brazil, and teach meditation to Buddhist groups down there. And one of the people in the Buddhist group was the chief coroner in the biggest hospital in Sao Paulo. There's thousands of people that die every night in Sao Paulo. And she asked me if I wanted to go see an autopsy. And I'd always wanted to. I never had the right chance. So I was down there and I said, yeah. So I went down to the basement of this hospital and wear a little, white suit over the robe and so on, put on some rubber boots, and go into this basement where all these bodies were laid out. And I went over there and some guy was with an old rusty hacksaw cutting the top of a skull off of somebody who just died. It was very interesting. So it was cutting through the skull and it got down to just the very last part and where it was kind of held together. So the saw couldn't cut it. So he got an old rusty chisel and a hammer from an old, grease-laden toolbox. And he goes, ping! The top of the skull went flying across the room. I go, wow, wonderful. This is like, I've been a monk for already, 40 years. And I've been practicing for this to see what my reaction would be. It was, wow, cool. Because not that, the poor guy was dead already, right? I mean, so it's nothing really. And then the person said, you want to hold the brain? I said, yeah. Because I wanted to see my reaction. So she pulled out the brain and she let me hold it. And I was just thinking, 12 hours ago, there were sparks flying through this brain and, somebody was alive. And now it's just a cold, dead, clammy piece of flesh. And then she said, let me see, check it out. Maybe it's got an embolism. I don't know how the guy died, And so we was checking the heart and the brain. And I said, do you always find a cause of death? And she said, well, sometimes could be multiple contributing causes to the death. So sometimes we just have to write our best guess. So I told her, if you can't determine the cause of death, you write birth. Because ultimately, death is the cause of death is birth. And that's the way the Buddha deciphered it too. So don't worry about how you're going to die. You're going to die. Doesn't matter how. Don't worry about it. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't prevent die. We don't want to die, of course, as I mentioned. We need to keep this body as long as we can until we attain at least the stage of a stream winner. But that's the way we should, everybody was always wanting to know the exact reason why somebody died. Because we're born. And we were born with all the possibilities. There's nothing special. So in that way, you can, minimize the amount of grief and grieving you have when, people die, because it's natural. Everybody dies, even the Buddha died. So, anyway, I still can't figure out that. Can anybody read that word, figure out what it is? I don't know. A little small print there.
Yeah, would this be considered a situation and not a problem? If something like
What's that word?
considered.
Consider. I better check my glasses.
Yeah. If we have any physical pain or anything we are experiencing right now, how it is related to past and future.
It's just a pain. Pain is a pain.
Not a suffering.
Well, you might, sometimes to think about the past and the future can be good. Like if you have a habit and you're about ready to keep the habit again, let's say using some bad speech or slandering somebody, or, then before you do that, consider, okay, how many times have I done this before? And it always caused me problems. So seeing the amount of suffering that has occurred because of your previous habits can hopefully stop you in the present moment, from doing that habit again, and instead cultivate the wholesome habit, the opposite of that. So instead of telling a lie, tell the truth. Instead of talking about somebody's bad faults, talk about their good qualities, and so on. So in that way, but it's obsessing about the past and the future, trying to control it. That's when it causes, because ultimately we can't control that. But we can learn from things, but we can't control it. Okay. What should our at-home practice be? I'll talk about that in the future. Tomorrow. So you'll say, no, I won't leave tonight. I was thinking about leaving tonight. No, I'm going to stay. Right? Okay. So if I talk about what you can do when you go home, you're going to be thinking about that now instead of just trying to be in the present moment, letting go of thoughts. Okay. What influences, if any, did the use of psychedelics have on your path to becoming a Buddhist monk? Now, I can't say for any certainty, but everything we do affects us in one way or another. But as I've already mentioned, back in the 60s and 70s, when psychedelics, became very popular, they were, the people in my age group, they experimented with that. And that's why Timothy Leary, how many of you remember the name Timothy Leary? Baba Ram Das, okay, they were sort of the gurus of LSD, and preaching that as quasi-religious experience. And it's true, as I mentioned, that those drugs can cause short circuit our normal brain waves, where opens up different areas of the brain where we may feel like having infinite consciousness, or where the ego dissolves. But it can also lead to problems because people get deluded. So the reason they banned LSD, now LSD wasn't illegal up until about maybe 1969, 70. I don't know exactly what year it was. But it was because a few young kids who weren't trained in it and didn't have any kind of, they were just taking LSD for fun and games. And they thought they could fly, because that's a feeling you can get. You feel weightless. And so they jumped off a skyscraper in New York and had to, pick up their pieces in a shovel. And this man's daughter, Art Linkletter, was a famous TV personality. It was his daughter that died because he was very powerful with the TV and the media and very rich. He publicized all this and turned the public again. Not that one example, there was other examples. So it was the danger of taking these hallucinations to be real and then causing these accidents. But I also had this similar experience. When I was in the army, I was stationed in Germany, and used to go to Munich, which is a big city in Germany. And that was when psychedelic discotheques and all these bands were, at their height at that time, 1969, 70, 68 and 70. So from the hippies in the park, I got some LSD, and I went to this club. I was getting off on this acid. I was upstairs looking down over the balcony. There was a dance floor there, right? And then there was the balconies around. You could go up there and you could look down and watch the people dancing. And so I went up there and was watching this, and I was getting off on this acid. And it looked like the people, this is a hallucination, it looked like the people dancing were just going up and down on like a big feather bed or a water bed. And I felt if I jumped off, I could sink down into that feather bed and kind of just come up like that. That was going through my mind. And I actually started to climb over the railing. And fortunately, there was a guy next to me who grabbed me and pulled me back. Say, "Hey, guy, what are you doing?" And then I came to my senses. So that's a danger. That's a danger of taking those drugs, because you think that these things that are happening to you are real, but it's just our brain creating these things. So that's the important thing. But those drugs can create these experiences of losing the feeling of your body, and just seeing everything as being molecules and atoms, because a lot of people have these experiences. And that's why they're considered but you can never be sure what's going to happen when you take those drugs. And when you come off of them, then also, you get bummed out, or things happen. So it's better that, you're not taking those. But anyway, so taking them did have a lot of people like myself. They wanted to explore if drugs can do this. And then the yogis were talking about getting into these states through meditation. So that's why people got interested in doing yoga and meditation, thinking they might be able to get into these kind of states. And it is possible. They might not be the same kind of states, but even meditation produces a more permanent state where the drugs are not permanent. They last for a few hours and you go back to normal. But with meditation, at a certain point in development, you can reach states where you have much more control over going in and out of them. And in the case of an arahant, of course, then they remain in a permanent state of liberation, mental liberation. So I don't know if those things had any definite effect, but I don't really think about it that way. Something did, whether it was my past karma or other things. How do we prepare the mind and body for sleep? How do you prepare for it? Well, meditating before sleep is a good way. Although certain types of meditation may prevent you from going to sleep, because it makes the mind and the awareness so wide awake that you might have trouble going to sleep. So just don't prepare the body and mind for sleep. Just lay down and sleep. That's, of course, you're having insomnia or some other sort of thing like that, or now if you're very anxious and all these anxious and worried thoughts can cause you not to be able to sleep, because And so doing things like some meditation and calm down might then help you to do that. And there's also a secret yogic technique called alternate nostril breathing, Loma Viloma Pranayama, by closing off one nostril, breathing in one nostril and closing that, and then breathing out the other nostril, and you're visualizing prana going up and down the right and left side of the spinal cord. These are specific yogic techniques. It is said that if you're successful in doing that, and it takes a lot of concentration to do that, that moving of the prana energy up and down along the spine, the sides of the spinal column, going through the chakras and so on, can calm and tranquilize any, excited energy in those and help you to sleep. LOL. Lots of luck. Try it. Just don't get caught up in things that makes you obsess and worry and fear and all the things that may cause that kind of sleeplessness. The Buddha, sometimes in the winter, Buddha is walking along and there was no place. He just lay down on the hard frozen ground, and all he had was an extra robe, he folded out, and he slept out in cold temperatures and a hard ground. And in the morning, people would come by and say, "Oh my gosh, did you sleep there? It's so cold and the ground's hard. Did you sleep okay?" And the Buddha said, "In the world of people, I always sleep well," because his mind was not disturbed by
One of the best sleepers.
those causes and conditions. Here, everybody wants, to find the perfect place, the perfect bed, the perfect mattress. Get your mattress number, the sleep number, all this stuff, And can't sleep if there's too many lights or not enough lights, and have to keep a light on because they're scared of the dark. And, I'm not making light of that, but I'm just saying that this is all, the accumulated causes and conditions that, make it difficult. If someone is having a hard time keeping the mind from wandering, what should they do? Well, it is said that practicing anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, is one of the ways to overcome, the restless mind. But people that minds are really agitated, that probably won't help them. You already have to be at least in some reasonable state of mind, and then you practice anapanasati, and you can help still the thoughts. But if your mind is that disturbed, then even that might help. Take a sleeping pill. Again, stop thinking about the things that making your mind wander. Lust, desire, anger, hatred, worry, fear, all these things are what makes the mind agitated. It makes it wander. And the only way you're going to stop it from wandering is stop feeding it. We're feeding the mind with all these things to think about. People want excitement. What do they expect? That's why in meditation retreats, that's why all these precepts are there. Avoid watching televisions, and go to the monasteries, all these excitable things, singing, dancing, watching shows. All these things are going to affect your mind if you indulge in it, having relationships with people. That's why all these precepts, 8 precepts for retreats, they're there for a purpose again. Not just to make you suffer. They're there for a reason. And the reason is knowing how these things affect the mind, especially for people that want to get more calm and peaceful. But the modern person, they just want their cake and eat it too. They want to be able to just go around, do anything they want, but then sit down and just enter some deep state of meditation. And then they get frustrated when they can't. And they say, oh, that teacher's no good. Let me go to another one. Let me try this technique. People are going around shopping for the perfect pill, the perfect technique. There isn't one, friends. I mean, there are techniques that may work for certain people, but because everyone is different. Not everybody will be able to make progress on the same meditation technique. Whether it's just concentrating on, the breathing. Some people have difficulty just practicing Anapanasati. Other people might get more concentrated by scanning through the body. Other people might get concentrated chanting a mantra. Or there's Tibetans, they do all this phantasmagoria, visualizations and tantric practices, and they say that gets them into all these states. But each person has got to just try a few things and see what works. And you may find it and you may not. But if you start digging too many holes, it's like you're trying to find water. So you dig a hole here, but you only dig down 2 feet. Oh, there's no water here. If you'd have kept digging down a few more feet, you might have hit water. But you say, oh, there's no water here after 2 feet. So you go to another place, dig another hole, 2 feet. Oh, there's no water here. And you keep on digging all these holes, you never find water because you didn't go deep enough. These people want the best tips. Best tips that have worked for you to quiet and still the mind. Well, that's difficult to say because, you do lots of different things and you don't know what exactly is helping to still the mind. But doing yoga and meditation, deep, slow breathing, and some yoga exercises before sitting to meditate definitely has an impact on your mind or makes it easier because it minimizes pain because of circulation. You're more flexible and you're not sagging. You get all kind of pains when the gravity is pulling you down. You're sitting straight. Doing some deep, slow breathing, you're getting concentrated by that. That's, to me, one of the most powerful methods. But not everybody may be able to do it. Some other people, I tried that, it doesn't work for me. Okay, forget. But you can try some of these things. If they work, you can use them. If they don't, well, you're free to try something else. How do we handle addictive fantasies and behaviors that hurt us and we can't seem to stop well, this is definitely a problem. And that's why, there's so many rehab places in the world that people are going to rehab, but almost 95% of them have to keep going back 2 or 3 times because they relapse. They may not have the ideal supportive conditions, good friendship, other people to, to be with, to help it's when you're alone that people's minds just play all kind of games and get sucked back into bad habits and things like that. So spiritual friendships are good, as well as having other types of, good conditions. But again, not everybody's able to have them for one reason or another. So it's not easy. That's why, kids hear all the time that all these things are bad. There's vaping, all these other weird things that are going on, and all these things, these dangerous habits that high schoolers, I heard, they're daring other students to do this and that, and they wind up getting killed or injured, and because they don't know how to think, and they get caught up into these sort of habits. Or something else. You lose your loved one, and you don't have meditation, so you take to the drink, the drugs to escape your mental problems, and then you get hooked and addicted. It's because people haven't been taught. I mean, they should teach in elementary school, teach meditation, teach people the Dhamma. If they had that, probably it would prevent a lot of these bad things happening as you grow older and becoming an adult. Because the longer you go with the habits, the harder it is to stop them. I sound like a preacher. I'm sorry. Okay, friends, I think let's stop there because I know you're going to go home tonight. It's already getting a little late. And, so we want to get at least a short meditation in before you leave so you can sleep well. Okay, so go ahead and stand up, stretch your legs for a few minutes. So just stand straight, relax your arms at the sides, do some 3-part breathing. That's really the best way, I'm telling you. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Hold the breath in. Squeeze every oxygen out, atom into the bloodstream. Breathe out. And the next in breath, arms over the head. Interlock the fingers, stretch up. Stretch the head back. Out breath. Arms back to the sides. In. Stretch up, bend back a bit, really arching the lower spine. Out breath. Once more. Out. And the next in breath, lifting up on the balls of the feet, arms over the head, stretch up. Out. Feel the air going out as the arms come down, coordinating those movements with the breathing. It's more powerful in breath. Out. Once more. And feel that outline of the body. It's one of the most powerful techniques to be able to, at any moment, just the eyes closed, feel that outline of the body. Like you were looking in a mirror. Just watching the body standing and breathing. When you're just watching it standing and breathing, a fly lands on it, you're not so apt to react. Oh, a fly, cool. No big deal. Or an acre of pain there. It's not mine, it's just the body. That's the way you have to train the mind. It's not me, not mine, not myself. It's just a body, it's just a mind. So do something. Head turning from right to left. Okay, now mindfully sit back down. There's this chant that I do. It's similar to kind of a mantra. It's can be help you to center the mind. It's called the Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya means homage to the Buddha. But in this sense of starting meditation, we're referring to the Buddha, which is the intrinsic, inherent wisdom of non-duality that's there as the very base of the mind, the natural awareness. That's what the Buddha had awakened to. So in that chanting, to follow those syllables all the way down to the end, and on an out breath, and you're chanting, and then you coordinate it so the sound and the breath stops at the same time, and then stay at that point. It can be very powerful. So anyway, I'm just going to chant this. Just try to feel the vibrations in your body and mind. Let it relax you to the present moment. Feel any effects from that. And so just begin some deep, slow breathing. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. When the breath starts coming back in by itself, just continue to feel it. You can continue to sitting longer if you're having good mindfulness and concentration. Otherwise, when you're ready, mindfully take your rest. See you back tomorrow. Whatever awareness or stillness you might have gotten, keep that with you. Be mindful driving home.